हम लोग सब
Hello, everyone. This is Tikva from Homeopathy for Humanity. Thank you for joining us again for our ongoing Organon learning sessions, where we review each aphorism one after another. And Sanjay, please say hi to the people as well.
Hello everyone. I am Dr. Sanjay Solanke. I am from Ambejogai, Central Maharashtra, and co-founder of Homeopathy for Humanity with Tikva. And today we are on to aphorism number 11. And we have just begun the explanation of vital force or understanding of vital force from aphorism number 9 till it will go till 18, 20, like that. And today we are on 11th. And as we are continuing, Tigwa, we could, can you read that aphorism if you have a book?
You want me to throw it up on the screen with a PDF?
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Let's see if I can manage my screen share, okay?
Okay, there you go.
This one has a very, 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 very long footnote.
And actually footnote is very important. But because that explains the aphorism.
Okay. When a person falls ill, it is only this spiritual, self-acting, automatic ill force everywhere present in his organism that is primarily deranged by the dynamic influence, materia peccans, upon it of a morbific agent inimical to life. It is only the vital principle deranged to such an abnormal state that can provide the organism with its disagreeable sensations and incline it to the irregular processes which we call disease. For as a power invisible in itself and only cognizable by its effects on the organism, its morbid derangement only makes itself known by the manifestation of disease in the sensations and functions of those parts of the organism exposed to the senses of the observer and physician, that is, by morbid symptoms, and in no other way can it make itself known.
Okay.
Okay, then
Very important. Okay, you can continue with that your basic simple English words.
Yep, so we have a lot of words in there that are kind of difficult words in English, like self-acting automatic. It means that it happens by itself and that is present in the whole person, the whole organism. And this deranges the vital force and it causes sensations that are disagreeable. Disagreeable means unliked. So it doesn't produce pleasure, it produces things like pain and suffering and other sicknesses. So disagreeable means unpleasant. And irregular processes. Irregular processes would be what we call disease, but like, let's say if somebody's thyroid is off, that's going to be an irregular process, that the thyroid's not going to be producing as much thyroid hormone as it needs. So that's irregular. Thank you, Nisim. So an irregular process would be something that you would see, let's say, in a laboratory test or in you're doing an examination, with like, let's say the heart rate, if somebody has heart palpitations when they shouldn't. There are times where somebody might have heart palpitations and that would be totally normal and understandable. But whenever anything happens that it shouldn't is an abnormal process. And those are caused by what we call disease. Okay. So when a person gets sick, the whole person is affected by an offending matter. That word peccans, it means like an offense in Latin. And materia, that means a matter. It means a substance, a thing. It means offensive matter. Now we know that people can get sick from like exposure to chemicals. That are another offensive matter. There's a lot of different ways that people can get sick, but offending matter is technically how we would translate materia peccans into English. And yes, then in the next line, the offending matter can be toxins or pathogens, the things that cause disease. The body responds with signs and symptoms to make the disease known. This is the only way disease is known. Morbid signs and symptoms. And then we have to look at the word morbid. Morbid, when we translate that. Affected by, caused by, causing, or characteristic of disease. And it comes from mort and morbus, which is Latin for death and illness. Now, Hahnemann was aware of infectious materials. He has a really interesting essay on cholera. And he says about how there's like little tiny organisms that seem to get caught on like fabric and hair and the beard of sailors and people who work on the water. And there's also a thing where Hahnemann had like scraped out an infectious area and then packed it with alcohol. So, in the 1500s was the development of the microscope. So the fact that there were things that were little miniature things, I think they called it animalcules. I'm pretty sure they were called animalcules back then. This was a known thing, for a couple of hundred years prior to Hahnemann, that there were things that made people sick. Various germs and such, but it's not the only thing that makes people sick. We know that now, and they knew that then. But then he says that the disease products produced by the body generally contain the infected matter. And then in one of the introductions to one of the things of Organon, he says that if it was only infectious matter, then in that case, when we get a cold, if we blow our nose really well, then the cold would be gone. So there's more to disease than just removing infectious matter. Because if somebody has an infection, let's say somewhere in their body, we can't just open the abscess. This disease is still going to be there. It's more complicated than that. So he explains that nothing needs to be drained, drawn off, or removed. And that is something that, traditional medicine has been very good at trying to make people vomit, have copious bowel movements, bleeding them, all different kinds of things. Now it's kill, right? Let's kill with antibiotics, antifungals, and let's remove inflammation, not by removing blood, but by giving anti-inflammatories or steroids. So we're changing nowadays, people change the operative processes of the organism while they are trying to treat them. But what it really does is it tends to make the body work harder. So as a homeopath, we're working with the body, not against the body, and not trying to override the body or its systems. So what we would do, let's say if somebody has a tendency for getting sick, or if somebody has allergies, what we want to do is we want to change the hosts, how the person responds, as opposed to stopping the process. Okay, and then I said here, like he says, that if it would help, then a cold would be quickly cured by a good nose blowing, which I think is so funny. Hahnemann's so clever, and he puts together such brilliant statements. It's just so much fun for me. Yeah, when we do Materia Medica, it is just so fun. It's like, sometimes he just goes on and rants. Okay, so an internal illness is a derangement. That means things aren't working properly, that affects the whole body. The vital force, automatic, is deranged by the offending matter. Then it says that the vital principle is deranged to such an abnormal state that it can only give disagreeable sensation and create the irregular process we call disease. So the vital principle animates and controls the vital force to show the signs and symptoms of disease. And then we've got the great footnote.
Okay, let me uh, say something before we go on to these few footnotes. In this aphorism, Hahnemann just says when the person falls ill, it's his that vital energy which is deranged, and this vital energy gives out the expression of his inability to perform. Okay, so whatever after derangement, and how it will derange dynamically. This dynamic word is explained actually in a footnote. That time we can go on to that part. But this is energy we need to understand. This is energy that produces all sensation and functions of the body. Means it will produce all sensation, whatever healthy or non-healthy, but it will produce all sensation and function. When these are under comfortable zone, we don't have awareness of the function of the body. Like our heart is beating, but we don't see it or we don't feel it. We have all those pulsation, pulse, blood running from our vessels, but we don't feel that, or there is no awareness. And in the disease state, when there is vital force function is not optimal, that time the first sign we felt is we felt this awareness of internal organs, and this is the disease, and this sensation and function whatever vital force is producing is disease state. And only this Hahnemann is saying in this aphorism, it is the vital force who is deranged with the influence, dynamic influence, and it produces all the sensation and function of the body. And he also called that morbid, what is that? Morbid influence, right? Or morbid agent, you can say. Morbid agent or inimical agent. And these agents are those agents which have ability. See, it is not the material that affecting the material. It is the dynamic energy is affecting another dynamic energy. That means even the disease producing agent are also dynamic. They will affect our vital force, and our vital force in return will produce the sensation and function accordingly. Okay, and this is the only mean it can be expressed. There is no other way to understand. Change, change sensation and function of the body. What is sensation? Sensation,
What we feel.
yeah. How you feel? Are you in comfort level or are you in discomfort level? That is what you call perspective of each individual. How much energy you require to function, right? So now he is explaining about two words in this aphorism. That is, one is materia peccans, and Tikva explained very nicely offending. What
Offending matter and
offending
offending
matter?
substance.
Yeah,
Matter means substance.
and
If you're talking about the universe and you're talking about matter, that's
exactly.
substance. It's something that
The substances which
is there.
which cause or disease, you can see a material cause of disease, right? And in easy way or other way, you can see in nowadays we see that in modern or old method or old medicine, according to Hahnemann. But in an allopathic way, they say the material cause is there, it affects the material body, right? They say remove that cause, remove that disease part, material, and disease will be cured. Like if you remove the stone from your kidney, they say you are cured. But it's not like that. Because these diseases are not actually the real disease. Real disease is inside. And whatever they call as disease are the result of disease. They are result of disease. So हम लोग एक बात बोलते हैं, ये लोग बोलते हैं कि तुम्हारा ऑर्गन खराब है इसलिए तुम बीमार हो. You are sick because your organ is sick, or right? But
But it's the
actually,
opposite. Homeopathy, this is the opposite. That there's something already wrong that then causes that organ to malfunction. So there's already something that's happening inside the interior of the body before an organ goes bad.
And in homeopathy, they say you're sick because you're already sick inside. Means you're organic sick because you're sick inside. Difference is only that our organ is not sick unless we are sick inside. This is homeopathy. And this Hahnemann tried to explain. And in this footnote, what is the footnote second? No, sorry, footnote first is materia peccans. It is about the material causes material disease. And in homeopathy, how homeopathy is, it's everything about a dynamic, the word dynamic. And dynamic itself, dynamization and dynamic itself is one of the homeopathic principle. He talks about vital force. He talks about dynamic is nothing but that energy gives animation for material world. I'm talking material world or material universe. It gives animation. It gives life. It gives life to movement to every cell. It's automatic functioning. So, Tiko, can you continue with the footnote 2?
Why don't you read for a few minutes?
We see he talks about what is dynamic influence, a dynamic power. Our earth is, by virtue, is a hidden invisible energy. Carries the moon around her in 28 days. What holds moon to earth? Why it is not just escaping from its bonds? What holds that atom, electron and proton together? Right? It's not about the material. It's about the energy that holds material together. Which carries moon around her in 28 days and several hours, and the moon alternatively. In definite fixed hours. Can you read that? Actually, I am unable to read the screen.
Which one are we on?
2, footnote 2.
Okay, I'll just go from here. What is dynamic influence? Dynamic power, our earth, by virtue of a hidden invisible energy, carries the moon around her in 28 days and several hours, and the moon alternately in definite fixed hours, deducting certain differences which occur with the full and the new moon, raises our northern seas to flood tide, and again correspondingly lowers them to ebb. Apparently, this takes place not through material agencies, not through mechanical contrivances, as are used for products of human labor. And so we see numerous other events about us as results of the action of one substance on another substance, without being able to recognize a sensible connection between cause and effect. See how interesting this is? Hahnemann's saying that there is something that makes it so that the earth goes around and the moon goes around, all the planets work, and everything all stays together and does the right things at the right time. And what is
And
this
without
for?
any mechanical connection.
Yes, what happens here? He's saying this is similar to what happens with people. Okay. Only the cultured, practiced in comparison and deduction, can form for himself a kind of suprasensual idea, that means above the sensual, above the physical idea, sufficient to keep all that is material or mechanical in his thoughts from such concepts. He calls such effects dynamic, virtual, that is, such as result from absolute, specific, pure energy and action of he, one substance, upon the other substance. So, I mean, look, it's kind of like the debate, is light a particle or is it a wave or is it both, right?
Here he is saying that it is only energy that holds without having any physical or mechanical connection. And earlier we have seen he's talking about, he is criticizing about that material cause for causing the material disease, material having effect on the material body. And actually here it is energy that, and here in this footnote he is explaining how the energy is functioning in the universe, how the forces are having effect on the material things without having any mechanical connection or physical connection. Same thing is happening in the human body. Energy is having or governing the material body. It's giving what you call, it animates the material body.
Makes it work,
Yeah, makes it work.
animates, makes it work.
And then he again gives some more examples. For instance, dynamic effect of sick making influence upon healthy man, as well as the dynamic energy of medicine upon the principle of life in restoration of health is nothing else than infection, and so not in any way material. So what is that? It's not material. It's not material. How the person is uh, getting sick from influences, and how the medicine are acting on the body to remove that disease. It's not an actual mechanical or physical connection. Medicine is also not having a direct physical effect on the body, material body. And even material organism is also not having direct effect on the material body. It's energy, with actually having effect on energy in the disease producing state or in the cure process. Right? When you are
Yes,
giving medicines, they are also having effect on the vital force. Means in cure process, medicine is also energy, and in disease means that particles or that what you call disease producing agent are also dynamic. They are also energy. It's not that bacteria are actually affecting the body. It's that its physical characteristics, influence, what you call noxious energy affecting our vital force to deflect or to change its vibrational pattern, and how the vibration pattern is there, accordingly our body will function, and accordingly it will produce some sensation. The person will start experiencing those sensations in the disease state. And again he gives one more example.
He gives a whole lot more examples. He talks about a magnet next. Just as the
Yeah,
energy of a magnet Attracting a piece of iron or steel is not material, not mechanical. One sees that the piece of iron is attracted by one pole of the magnet, but how is it done is not seen. This invisible energy of the magnet does not require mechanical material assistance, hook or lever to attract the iron. The magnet draws to itself, and this act upon the piece of iron or upon a steel needle by means of a purely immaterial, invisible, conceptual, inherent energy that is dynamically and communicates to the steel needle the magnetic energy equally invisibly, dynamically. So we're talking about dynamics again, and dynamis means movement, motion, power. The steel needle becomes itself magnetic, even at a distance when the magnet does not touch it, and magnetizes other steel needles with the same magnetic property, dynamically, with which it had been endowed previously by the magnetic rod. Just as a child with a smallpox or measles communicates to a near untouched healthy child. Here we're getting really interesting here. Let me scroll up. Okay. Just as a child with smallpox or measles communicates to a near untouched healthy child in an invisible manner, dynamically, the smallpox or measles, that is, infects it at a distance without anything material from the infective child going or capable of going to the one to be infected, which is fascinating because they didn't really realize about things like viruses going through the air at this period of time. So it perhaps, viruses are, it is a kind of like a material substance, but it is so small that when it does affect people, there has to be like a perfect storm of susceptibility and infection before people get sick. So the here, but he says about how there's nothing that necessarily like, through the air with the breath, right? Okay. A purely specific conceptual influence communicated to the near child, smallpox or measles, in the same way as the magnet communicated to the near needle the magnetic property. In a similar way, the effect of medicines upon living man is to be judged.
In above paragraph, he has mentioned how disease is dynamic, and below now he talks about medicine. Every that's noxious agent, small virus or bacteria or whatever agent that produces the disease, have ability to produce disease, how it will produce dynamically, it will give it, means it is individualized effect, it has individualized effect. And even the person himself will have individualized effect. And even the medicine itself, they will also have their effects. Continue, Tikwa, in the similar way.
Okay. Substances which are used as medicines are medicines only insofar as they possess each with its own specific energy to alter means to change, the well-being of man through dynamic conceptual influence by means of the living sensory fiber. upon the conceptual controlling life principle. The medicinal property of those material substances, which we call medicines proper, relates only to their energy to call out alterations in the well-being of animal life. Only upon this conceptual means concept, idea, thought. Only upon this conceptual principle of life depends their medicinal health altering, conceptual, dynamic influence. Just as the nearness of the magnet pole can communicate only magnetic energy to the steel, namely by a kind of infection, but cannot communicate other properties, for instance, more hardness or ductility, etc. And thus every special medicinal substance alters through a kind of infection that well-being of man in a peculiar manner, exclusively its own, and not in a manner peculiar to another medicine. As certainly as the nearness of the child ill with smallpox will communicate to a healthy child only smallpox and not measles. That's a really interesting statement here. So when you get exposed to somebody who has smallpox, you're not going to get measles because you're only going to get smallpox. Let's hope we don't get smallpox, but it's one thing is only going to be one thing. That exposure is only going to have its limited capacity, just like how medicine has a limited capacity. We have to have the proving symptoms be the same as the medicine symptoms that are shown that on the inside. Sorry, got that wrong. In order to cure somebody, we have to look at the proving symptoms and match them with the symptoms that the person has. And this is the only way to cure illness. And he's saying it's basically the same thing. He's comparing one to the other. That if you go near somebody who has chicken pox, you're only going to get chicken pox from that person. If you give somebody random medicines that they don't need, it's not going to cure it.
Hello. I think Tikwa is frozen. Tikwa? Hello. Hello, Tikwa? Are
Yeah.
you there?
Oh, it says my connection's unstable. Let me open my door. Yeah, sometimes my Wi-Fi gets a little flaky.
Oh, you don't have extender?
No, my Wi-Fi. I do have an extender. It's right outside my door. It's just that, you know how sometimes I lose my Wi-Fi? Happens all the time. Oh, it switched the neighbor's Wi-Fi. Okay, students, do we have questions here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you lost your power. So my internet's flaky and Sanjay just lost his power. Okay, so we want to understand this conceptual thing happens where the dynamic influence that's with medicines and when you have disease. So disease is dynamic, medicine is dynamic. These medicines only act upon our well-being wholly without communication of material parts of the medicinal substances, thus dynamically. as if through infection. Here's where we have a problem using material substances for medicine, because material substances may change the processes, but they're not going to be dynamic. For a medicine to be dynamic, it has to be in potency. It has to be potentized. And the best, Hahnemann worked with basically the 30C and higher. He even used the 1M. And then he developed the LM series of potentization, which is a little different, but this is very important, this dynamic. Everything needs to be dynamic. Illness is dynamic. Medicine needs to be dynamic to cure the dynamic illness. You have, for example, you have two things. We have two books here. Both of these are dynamic. One's the person. The person gets sick and they need a dynamic realignment for their illness. So we take the matching dynamic medicine, the substance that is in potency, and we apply it. And it takes over and fills the gaps where the dynamic influence is from the disease and makes it go away. And this is how Hahnemann explains how homeopathic medicine works. You have the similar, we have two books, person book, medicine book, apply it. Both are dynamic and they meet together in the organism and it removes the wrong dynamic influence. And so the whole thing about everything being dynamic is very, very important. And so therein comes some of the problems that people see with using, nowadays people talk about material homeopathy, that you can use homeopathy on a material level instead of a dynamic level. And you're going to run across that in school, that a lot of people are doing that. But this is not something that Hahnemann recommended. Okay. Far more healing energy is expressed in a case in point by the smallest dose of the best dynamized medicines, in which there can be, according to calculation, only so little of material substance that its minuteness cannot be thought and conceived by the best arithmetical mind than by large doses of the same medicine and substance. So he's saying that the minimal, tiny fraction of dynamic energy is going to do far more work than anything material in substance. The smallest dose can therefore contain almost entirely only the pure, freely developed conceptual medicinal energy and bring about only dynamically such great effects as can ever be reached by the crude medicinal substances itself taken in large doses. Here again, he's saying, don't use crude substances. Don't use large doses. Don't do this. We want to bring the substance up to its dynamic level to match the dynamic level in the body and eradicate the disease dynamically. Because everybody knows, we see this, that if somebody takes, let's say, an herb, yeah, it's going to help, but it's not necessarily going to cure. If we take an anti-inflammatory, it's going to reduce inflammation for a little while, but then it's going to come right back. If we take an antihistamine, it's going to reduce the symptoms of like sneezing and itching, but it's going to come back. If we take an antacid, it is going to reduce acidity, but it's going to come back. But if we apply the appropriate dynamic medicine, we are going to be able to heal the condition. And while it might need to be given again and again a few times before the cure is complete, it is dynamically changing the body so that the cure happens instead of a short-term amelioration where people are watching the clock for their next dose. So he's saying that the dynamic, freely developed medicinal energy, well, the great effects can never be reached by the crude medicinal substances taken in large doses. And then Boninghausen, he talks a lot about this, about how in his day after Hahnemann died, that people were going for the material substances again, and they were going with the low dynamizations, that they were going with the decimal scale. And Boninghausen was so upset that people were using the decimal scale, 6x, 10x, 12x, saying it's not a properly developed power. As Boninghausen and the Hahnemannians were going higher and higher and higher, the other people in America, under Herring and others, were being influenced greatly by the traditional herbal culture in America and with the eclectic movement in medicine, and they were going backstepping. America was backstepping, and so was much of Europe under Herring's guidance. They were going lower and lower and lower and going into the material again, as Boninghausen was and the other Hahnemannians were going higher and higher and higher, more dynamic, more dynamic. So we have kind of a schism that happened in homeopathy where you had one sect going lower, and that includes, you have your Boricki Materia Medica. We've got everything that comes in like what are they called? Mother tinctures, use of mother tinctures. And then we have things like cell salts. Cell salts are not homeopathy. It's another form of medicine. Okay, let's continue with what Hahnemann's saying here. But he does say that the effects can never be reached by the crude medicinal substance itself, taken in large doses. Continuing with this, it is not the corporeal atoms of these highly dynamized medicines, nor their physical or mathematical surfaces, with which the higher energies of the dynamized medicines are being interpreted, but vainly, as it is still sufficiently material, which is very interesting because everybody's talking nowadays about the atoms and the atomic residue or the memory of water and things like that, right, guys? And he says that it's not in atoms or their physical or mathematical surfaces where these medicinal energy is found. More likely, there lies invisible in the moistened globule or in its solution, an unveiled, liberated, specific medicinal force contained in the medicinal substance, which acts dynamically by contact with the living animal fiber upon the whole organism, without communicating it to anything material, however highly attenuated, and acts more strongly the more free and more immaterial the energy has become through the dynamization. So this is so much fun what he's talking about here. So he's saying that there's something inside the substance that has been unveiled, that we've taken the veil off it, we've taken off its thing so we can see it, and that it's been liberated, that it's been made free, and that there's some kind of medicinal force in a substance that acts dynamically upon an organism. Now we know that homeopathic medicine works on plants, it works on animals, it works on people. So anything that is alive and is dynamic will be influenced by dynamic medicines. And so he's saying that the more dynamic the medicine, the more strongly and the more free this immaterial energy has become through the dynamization, which is again very, very important because we never give dry medicine. We always put medicine in water, And we always change the dynamization slightly in the water between any redoses, because that helps it act stronger, better on living organisms. So we go back, we're going to be reading a little more here from Hahnemann. It is then so utterly impossible for our age celebrated for its wealth in clear thinkers to think of dynamic energy as something non-corporeal. Non-corporeal means without a body. And he's saying that it's impossible for the people living in our time, but it is celebrated for its wealth in clear thinkers. That's saying that in his day and age, and in our day and age, that there are such thinkers that it's difficult for them to daily see this phenomena, this activity of how things work dynamically. But we see that things work dynamically, as he was saying earlier, the moon, the stars, the planets, the tides, all these things are dynamic forces. So he's all, why are people who are so intelligent unable to understand the dynamic force that is so clear? If one looks upon something nauseous and becomes inclined to vomit, did a material emetic come into the stomach, which compels him to this anti-peristaltic movement? See how clever Hahnemann is here? If we look at something disgusting and it makes us want to vomit, is it because something entered our body to make us want to vomit? Or is it something else? Was it not solely the dynamic effect of the nauseating aspect upon his imagination is what we see, right? And if one raises his arm, does it not occur that such a material, visible instrument, a lever, is not solely the conceptual dynamic energy of his will which raises it? Yeah, so then he goes on to say that, our spiritual action, there's something inside of the individual, inside each of us, that causes us that when we see something that's disgusting, that maybe we will vomit, and that we want to move our bodies. He says raising a limb, that there's not a machine that's doing it, an external machine, but it's happening automatically by our will, that it's happening because of what we want, and that this is conceptual, the thinking dynamic energy.
Okay. Here actually we finish. I'm sorry, I have lost power at my clinic, so I have to come from this mobile phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Overall, the essence of this aphorism is only that it's not the material being, it's dynamic. Whatever it is, whether it is a disease producing agent, whether it is medicines, everything, it's not about material. It's not about the material having effect on material. It's about something dynamic having effect on a dynamic energy. What is dynamic? Dynamics in body, which animates life in human being, is the vital force. And in one of the example, it says that when you feel nauseous and feel like vomit, is that something that secretes inside our stomach that giving us a sensation, or it is that secretions dynamic energy gives us that is, what do you call, triggers the cause of nausea or vomiting or the sensation of nausea, because every sensation and function of body is produced by vital force. So everything will go, every sensation will produce by vital force, every function is produced by vital force. So it's not about the material having effects, it's about the dynamic energy will have effect in disease state, in healthy state, and even in the recovery phase, in the uh, during treatment, not allopathic treatment, but she's talking about homeopathic treatment. Only homeopathic treatment is dynamic in nature.
And that's the whole point of why you're in homeopathy school, is to learn dynamic medicine for dynamic living beings.
Uh,
That's the
one
primary objective.
hmm, I
Understand the
think I have lost.
energy.
Huh? Hello? What do you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, I see it from your phone.
I think we have complete this. I would like, if anyone have any questions, they can ask. But as our experience, I can see which camera is on.
There you are.
Okay, here I am.
And look, now it's dark outside.
Okay. Do
Thanks,
anyone
guys.
have questions, guys?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
So, means which potency we get the dynamic action? Means there is after mother tincture, or it is mother tincture also we get the dynamic action.
No, mother tincture are not dynamic actually. Mother tinctures are just dilution. This part yourself have you taught
Yes.
in your session.
So,
Dynamization actually happens after the process of what you teach in pharmacy, trituration and succussion,
succussion.
right?
Right, sir.
So then if mother tinctures are not succussion, they are not made from succussion. They are just dilution. They are mixed with certain amount of vehicle. So the mother
Means
tinctures
it is
are
a
not dynamic. They will not
it is
have,
a material dose.
it will be
Means
called material dose, right? It will not go on to that dynamic plane. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
yes, sir.
Okay. I saw my mic for 1 minute. Something happened and I don't know. Okay. I had to log off from my mobile phone.
Because you were getting an echo from it.
Any other questions? Any of students? हिंदी में बात कर सकते हो बच्चों लोग?
हेलो, हाय सर, रिजवान, किसी को कुछ पूछना है? Anybody want to ask any question?
विजया
No,
लक्ष्मी?
ma'am. No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any
Yes, so
questions?
Hahnemann talks, when he's talking about potency, he's
Huh?
talking about the decillionth. In all of his earlier, in, let's say, fifth organon, sixth organon, and not sixth organon. In sixth organon, we're going to the LM potency, but prior to that, Hahnemann's talking like throughout the Materia Medica Pura about the decillionth. And the decillionth, when you do the math, is
1
somewhere
has to
around the 30th,
60.
around the 30C. When you do the math, it's somewhere around a 30C. And then Boninghausen then took up, everything from Hahnemann very, very carefully.
Tikwa,
Said
do
he
you have
copied
that book?
those.
Do you have that book? Boning Hussein's lesser writing?
Yes.
Go on to page number 93. What is there?
It's not on my 93, Sanjay. I would have to flip through the book and find it. But
Just a minute.
it's not on my 93. But he does talk about here on my 74 about the new edition of the Organon made by Hahnemann. He talks about the new way to potentize medicines, and that is going to be the LM potency. That's going to be the LM potency, which he says is superior. So I like working with the LM potency. And no, I don't necessarily give a test dose of a 30 beforehand either. There's so much information in this book, guys. This book is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And he gives a perfect example of fifth organon methodology about alternating the remedies as per the need in order not to repeat the same thing twice.
Sorry, page number 98. This book.
Is Boninghausen laser writing, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Page number 98.
Oh, it
Actually,
is well known that Hahnemann's 10th attenuation is equal to 30C. The 20th, therefore, to the 60C, and the 50th to the 105C, 150, and the 100th to the 300C. The decimal scale is also a useless retrogression of modern time. Just like I mentioned earlier, that the decimal scale is a useless retrogression. Retrogression means going backward in potency, that they've gone away from the Hahnemannian method and they're using the decimal potency, and that is a useless regression, that they've gone back in homeopathic practice to return to something that is not quite as good. So he's saying here that Hahnemann's 10th is equal to 30C. The 20th is equal to 60C. The 50th to 150C. So 100C is
this is actually a footnote for that what he is written above. You can read from first paragraph for in paragraph 287 of Organon 5th edition. Can you see that? Here in the center. Somewhere here.
Yeah, you gonna read?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Are you
Somewhere
asking? Yeah, go ahead and read.
No, I can read actually. You read that one. Or okay. For in paragraph.
We're gonna rename these sessions. Tikva reads everything.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Hahnemann rants about everything, and then we have Tikva reads everything. Okay. We have to take off our glasses to read close. Okay,
or in paragraph 287
can
of
I start
Organon.
where we want to start?
You are reading.
Okay. The higher dynamizations are to be used only in chronic diseases. It doesn't matter who says this, Bonninghausen says. It doesn't matter who said the higher dynamizations are only to be used in chronic diseases, but in acute diseases,
And
either lower dilution
one more thing. In during
Long-
Hahnemann's time,
have to be
one
used.
more thing.
Yeah, this is really like towards the end of Hahnemann's time.
During Hahnemann time,
Okay,
he
I know
was
you've heard
using
this. We've heard this all before in school. You haven't heard it yet if you're still in school.
attenuation.
Hmm?
Have you heard the word attenuation?
Aggravation,
Attenuation.
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 Yeah, I was gonna make a brilliant point here. I was.
Okay. You can continue with
Okay,
that point.
so we're going to learn in school that you should go low when there are material changes in the body. They're gonna tell you that. They're gonna tell you to go low there. They're gonna tell you to use low potencies, possibly even mother tinctures. But Bonninghausen is saying entirely the absolute opposite. And he says it doesn't matter who says this. He might be alluding to Herring, but we're not sure. That the higher dynamizations are to be used only in chronic, but in acute disease, either lower dilutions or even strong tinctures have to be used. Then he goes on to say, this assertion, this statement, which so far lacks any actual demonstration that is in no way confirmed by experience, has for a long time been considered as an axiom, a statement, a truth, that they think that it's true. And it is still so considered by many. Many people think this is true. But yet it is more, and one repeats it after the other without thinking or asking. He's saying that people pass on this information one to each other, that this is what we should do, that we should use the lower dynamizations, that we should use mother tinctures, especially if there's pathological changes, etc., 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 blah, 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 blah. Bonninghausen's like, screw that. These people are wrong. We want to go with these high, strong potencies, no matter what the pathology is, provided our patient is not dying and we're only palliating them, we want to cure the disease. And the best way to cure the disease is with higher dynamic energy. The higher the dynamic energy, within limits. I mean, nowadays people are using, 50 M potencies, the CM and the MM. He's not talking like that. He's talking to use, the 200, to use the 1M. But he makes a very interesting point here. We should have a learning session simply on this chapter. Okay. And so this is an axiom that people say without thinking or asking for experience about it. But the latter is the more important, as Hahnemann has so decidedly pronounced for the opposite view. He's saying that Hahnemann says the opposite is true. The opposite to using these low dynamizations. The opposite is true for using mother tinctures. The opposite is true for decimal potencies. We don't want to do these things, Hahnemann says. So says Hahnemann decidedly pronounced. So that is very, very important. Or in paragraph 287 of the Organon, 5th edition, at the conclusion, there is a remark in which we find the following words. The higher the attenuation by means of potentizing by 2 concussive strokes is carried, the more quickly and penetratingly the preparation seems to transform the vital force and to change the state, and the strength is but little diminished. Even if the potentizing is carried very far, instead of carrying it on, as is usually the case, and it is usually sufficient, to the 10th, even to the 20th, the 50th, the 100th, and higher, only that the duration then seems to be less enduring. So he's saying that he thinks that, we need to use these higher potencies, and he thinks that maybe the action might be lessened, but it is very, very important to use these, to use the dynamic. And then he goes down to the footnote saying that Hahnemann's 10th is equal to 30C, the 20th, 60C, the 50th, 150C, the 100th to the 300C. And the decimal scale is also a useless retrogression of modern time.
And most of the time, Hahnemann used 60th attenuation. What is 60th attenuation as compared to centesimal scale? He has given 60th attenuation means 180 C potency. Right?
The more dynamic our potency, the faster we're relieving people of disease.
Yeah.
But mostly people follow the pharmacy rules. Then the pharmacy, they're given the, if you have pathological changes, then you go for the materialistic dose, means that you can choose the decimal scale, or either you go for
What
the
is, that's why, madam, that's why we have studied today this aphorism number 11, where he says, whatever cause, uh, by material, on material, is not actually that. It is everything dynamic. Material is not having effect on dynamics. Actually, it is a dynamics having effect on dynamic. So there is no actually pathological state as such, unless and until you have to palliate.
Yeah, I agree, sir. Making very big problem, because all the students or those don't know about the boning Hassan ledger writing and don't follow the organon. Na? Mostly the rules of the follow the pharmacy. Then the
Exactly,
basic
exactly.
rules is the just in the plain paper. So they always kept in the mind that this is a rule only.
Right,
No,
and
that's
Hahnemann
why
is saying that
very,
this is not the
very
rule.
earlier I told that rules can be changed, but principle will never change. We have to follow homeopathic principle. Only because of those principle it is called homeopathy. Otherwise, it's not homeopathy. Without principle, you cannot call this system as homeopathy. If anybody is not following these principles of dynamization, this principle of chronic disease, principles of similar, law of minimum dose. What is minimum dose? You have to give a minimum dose. You don't have to, means minimum medicine is to required.
Right,
Law
and
of simplex.
proving data. Woo! Let's get excited by the proving data, because we have so much fun learning what Hahnemann teaches us. Yes, yes, yes.
So,
Yeah.
unless and until we have to suppress or palliate, actually we don't need to go on such a low potencies. There is a criteria to use low potency. If vitality is very low to respond, and it's not responding, or either it is responding vigorously to any potencies. That time you don't have to look onto the dynamics. You want medicine crudely to have effect on that physical body, on the material. It's not on dynamic plane now. You are
Right.
just working on organic level.
Right. And Hahnemann says that there are certain situations where we do that. There are certain situations, like if somebody has met with a terrible accident, we need to do whatever we need to do in order to keep the person alive. So we can do whatever needs to be done and then follow up with a more dynamic medicine later on. So yeah, I mean, there's this
Only
and that.
dynamic, only dynamic medicine will cure the person permanently. Otherwise, you are just practicing homeopathy allopathically.
Which I have a beautiful little picture about.
Agree, sir. Agree. Totally agree. Mostly when they use the medicine just like a form of the materialistic, then is it just palliate or either the suppress. Means that we are using the suppose patent. So it is not curable. Mostly symptoms relapsing.
Patent is not homeopathy.
Yeah. But
When you are
people are
using multiple medicine, and just companies bringing out that trade name to sell some product, it's not homeopathy. So homeopathy, you have to give simple medicine, minimum dose, and on principle of law of similar.
And the similar means according to the proving data. And that's why we learn proving data, because
this
it's
is a materia medica pura book. Good.
Yeah.
And all the proving data is available in the our materia medica pura. We have a 2 volume right now. Before when Dr. Hahnemann started, the 6th volume is the materia medica pura. Right now we have a 2 volume of the materia medica pura. And the
Yeah.
antistoric medicine we can get the chronic disease.
Yeah, there is a list of some medicine in chronic disease also. And it is very simple actually. He has led very simple guidelines. It's just have to eat like this, pick,
right.
eat.
It's so true.
And
I
it's
mean,
not
such
to,
beautiful, simple
in
guidelines. 100%.
actually, those practices nowadays we see, they are just eating like this. They are interpreting things. They are trying to frame the patient's symptom in their own ideas. And what Hahnemann says, just look at the fact. If it is black, say it's black. Don't think it is pink. Don't imagine it is red. Because it is black, and black is a fact. So homeopathy is factual. It's
Is
not
so factual. Totally factual and totally dynamic. We're using that energy, that dynamic energy. And it makes a beautiful system. And you're going to be able to cure people of all types of ailments with this beautiful, simple system of medicine.
And any question, if any students over here or others do have in relation with homeopathy, in relation with Hahnemann, in relation with his writings, chronic disease, Materia Medica Pura, or Boni Hussein, you can just message us on WhatsApp, or you can just pick and call us. We are always there to answer those questions. Right, Tikwa?
Sanjay is always there to pick up his phone. I am more likely to be found on WhatsApp with a message.
You can attend the questions on WhatsApp. You can call me or you can message me or you can message Tikva. We
You
have
can
group.
take the number of the madam and sir me. If anyone have a queries, then you can take number me.
नहीं किस कोई भी कभी भी कोई भी क्वेश्चंस हो, लेकिन कृपा करके रॉन्ग वे पे मत जाओ। होम्योपैथी बहुत आसान है, बहुत सिंपल है, अगर तुम उसे समझ सके तो।
We have lots of really fun
And
videos on our YouTube channel.
you have to work hard. There is no easy shortcut. There is no shortcut. Only shortcut is to work hard. होम्योपैथी खुद पढ़ो, समझो, एंड तुम्हारे दिल को अगर लगता है कि ये गलत है तो छोड़ दो। Any method. I am talking about any method. I am not talking about only a homeopathy. If you don't feel that it's not logic, it's not giving logical explanation, then leave it. Don't believe even Hahnemann if it is you feel it is he is wrong. But you have to read once to understand what exactly he is saying. Whether that saying are factual, that saying are logical, are they in relation with things which can be explained with scientifically nowadays. Only those people fight on that platform and they cannot prove homeopathy on the desk.
But
And
once you
don't shout.
understand the fundamental concepts, it becomes a lot easier.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir.
So, friends, thank you for attending the session.
Yep, thank you.
And we actually looking forward to have the students more on this learning session of Matra Medica and Matra Medica Pura and Organon. And occasionally we have a special guest lectures.
And we have all different kinds of stuff. You go to homeopathyforhumanity.com. There's a link tree to different things that we have going on.
If
Thank
you
you for joining.
if you have any questions in relation with potencies, case taking or selection of remedy and what you call LM potencies, chronic disease, whatever, we will be always there. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Wonderful
Thank you,
session.
teacher.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye bye. You can
Bye.
close the recording.